wondered what happened to it. So it's cool to see it again. Know that it didn't get butchered up or trashed or whatever. That's cool. Well, it's another day over here in the shop, and we're getting set up for a little interview with the Javelin. Robbie West is actually coming by, the guy that found this car in a side yard and had his buddy John Dover turn it into what you see here. We're gonna get his story, but we want the car to look its best. So we're gonna put these on it. So tell them what these are.
So these are called no lights and from Protronics, but it's more like Notronics.
Yeah, Racecar electronics, but there's nothing electronic.
Yeah, so they, I guess like a lot of years ago, were $30.
It's pretty expensive.
And they're just stickers.
What does it say? Bring your race car's front end to life. No lights, the permanent alternative to expensive airbrushed headlights.
There you go. It's probably cheaper than expensive airbrushed headlights. But anyway, they came with the car. They've never been on there, and we think it will make the front end look better. We do eventually want to put headlights in it for doing drag and drive, but in the meantime, we're not going to use these stickers for anything else, so we'll use them here.
Yeah, perfect. So we also have these headlight bezels we got from Joe Bahachik up in Kenosha, Wisconsin, like the go-to guy for AMC parts. And we haven't even actually test fitted these, so let's see how they actually line up with the grill.
Like that?
Something like that. This grill is not in here with the factory mounts or anything. It's just kind of stuck in there. So I don't know how these are actually supposed to fit. So it should go like something like that.
You know, they're made out of what's called unobtainium.
Yeah, unobtainium.
Something you can't buy.
But this can tell you where to put the sticker.
Yeah.
So you can actually run headlight bezels. That gives you an idea. Instead of just sticking it in there blindly. That's why it centers it off the body of the car.
Sure.
But you can see where the factory grill would have come up and mated to it.
You don't ever have to worry about the fuse blowing.
Fuseless lights. All right, so I got one half of the sticker peeled off on the back. We've got our headlight bezels in here, so we're just kind of gonna try to get this thing as close to centered as we can. That way we have headlights. And then in the future, we'll put real headlights on the car. So this is a temporary solution for aesthetic reasons.
I hope the alignment's good.
Yeah, I'm sure the beam pattern's gonna be all off.
Yeah.
We're gonna have to adjust these. Oh wait, you can't, because they're just stuck to a piece of metal. They're a little wrinkled. There's like a clear layer on top of the actual sticker, and I don't know if it's supposed to stay on there or not, but I know if I peel it, I will ruin it.
They're probably like somewhere between 30 and 40 years old.
They've held up pretty great considering.
Yeah.
I mean, this car and everything for it was in climate controlled storage its entire life. So that's why this car, even though it's basically a 40-year-old race car, is still basically pristine.
Looks a lot better than a black hole.
Look how slick this car is though.
Nice.
40-year-old car.
How old is the paint? Do we know?
1996 or 7. That's what the paint cans that came with it. One of them has the date of 96 on it. So I would assume that's about the time it was painted. We could ask Tony, I'm sure he remembers. He painted it. That's very interesting. You can tell they're fake, but it at least looks like it has something.
Maybe the black holes are better. Maybe on camera it looks all right. I don't know. I think we're focused on it.
I don't think you would notice it so much if you weren't paying attention. But yeah, there's a modification that's finally been made to the Javelin after how many years of these being around?
Yeah, they're too bright. We need to turn them off.
Does this have a date on it? There's an 80s Monte Carlo right there.
Probably somewhere
80s
around
or
that
90s.
Time, yeah, so I guess they made them in rectangles too.
And that's a Pro Street style car with the big wheel out back and the Heartbeat of America front plate. So that's probably 90s.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Retro stuff.
It's now street legal, right?
Oh. In the daylight.
Oh, goodness. This is the first time we've had the car on the lift too, so let's give you a tour underneath it while we can. Now there we go. So it's up in the air now. We're gonna set it down on the locks and show you some of John Dover's handiwork under here. This is my first time actually under the car, and for an 80s car, it's pretty good. there's still some stuff I could tell that's gonna need finished up or changed a little. But as a whole, like even notched cross members for the transmission and stuff. So we're gonna have to change the transmission mount and the location of the mid plate. There was something going on with it. I'm gonna have to resolve. But other than that, it's pretty much bolted in, ready to go. We are gonna adjust the rear end slightly, probably move these brackets back.
So you gotta make some new bars, right?
Yeah, these are kind of antiquated, but the way these are set up, basically, it's just a piece of, you know, tubing that's been drilled and tapped in the end rather than having an actual like nut welded into it. Like they make inserts that go into DOM now that's way stronger than just a threaded bar.
Yeah.
And these bars actually need to be a particular length. So we're gonna have to loop in the Wilders. They have a race shop up near Dallas, I believe.
Yeah.
And they'll help us figure out all these measurements. I think these brackets are gonna be moved back some because if you look here, the wheel is very close to the front of the wheel well, and there is a lot more room in the back. And when these tires grow as you get up to speed, with where they're at now, I think it would end up tearing up the front of this.
Or tearing up the tire when you're doing 150 miles an hour.
Well, yeah, that would also be bad. You don't want to lose a tire at that speed.
Yeah.
You will die.
So I'm sure over the years, the geometry has changed as people have learned more of what to do and what not to do. So things will need to change a little back here, but overall it's pretty solid as is.
Yeah, this is a pretty cool little setup. It's the bolt for this lower bar, but also is a clevis for this, I don't know what you would call it. It's a panhard bar, but it's the other direction. Yeah. So I don't know what you would technically call it, but it centers up the rear axle, keeps it from walking back and forth. Yeah. But that's pretty trick, actually. You can see how this car was never truly finished. There's literally...
And we brought that all the way back from Wisconsin on the trailer without those nuts on there. And they didn't come out. I guess there was some pressure against them.
But we'll be pulling this rear end out and cleaning it and painting it and building it. And we might be changing these brackets on it, those brackets up there. So there's a little bit to do, but this thing is a great platform as it sits.
Did you put this in?
No, it's been there. It's just to hold the axles. So it can be a roller.
Okay.
Otherwise, it would just be floating around.
There's not a gear in there.
There's probably a gear on it, but I think it's a 28 spline.
Oh, okay.
Open diff with like something. So we have another third member that we can build into something else. But this is a Curry 9-inch. We've got some old Coney coilovers from back in the day. Those are going to be being replaced with some QA1 mod shocks, I think. But it's got all new brake lines all the way forward. So we'll probably run it with the brake setup that's on it and then change it when we make it a street car.
But we got to change this deal.
Yeah, this can run on the drag strip because you're not really going on anything crazy. But if you were on the street, you would probably end up ripping your master cylinder off at some point.
Because the car is pretty low and it's
it's
down
pretty much the lowest point. I mean, if you ground that down, it's actually not lower than the rocker. So
yeah, a little rust.
I think that's where he was actually cutting structure out of the car.
Oh, okay.
So you can see where he worked his way through, but there's where the floor used to be attached.
On the other side in the same spot.
Yeah, so you can see the floor used to come up and then back down, and then all the way up to here. There's more of the factory floor. So he didn't do like a perfect job of cleaning it up, but I mean it's more than adequate.
We need some boots for our rack and pinion because there's no rubber boots on there.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, which on a racetrack you don't really care.
Yeah,
but you're not using it that much.
In the future, all of this is going to get changed out. I'm not planning to keep this factory Mustang 2 in here. Even if I change it to aftermarket Mustang 2, it's going to get changed because this is a lot weaker, being a stamped steel control arm, stamped steel upper control arm, and a stamped steel cross member.
Well, there's companies that still make that stuff, right?
Yeah, I mean, you could do tubular control arms and a universal fit cross member rather than having it be this weaker stamped steel. And we want to get as much travel as we can out of the front. So I know Nicky Bobby is actually making some Mustang 2 long travel kits. Maybe we'll end up putting one of those on here. That way, when the weight transfers and the front end comes up, the tires drop down to where they still are in contact with the track. Because this has a good bit of travel as it
Yeah,
sits.
it's hard to steer when they're in the air.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
That's when you're just hanging on, hoping a prayer. But it's a remarkably nice car overall. Just a few changes that need to happen. So for those that are watching on YouTube, this is Rob West, the guy who found this car in a side yard. You paid, what, $300 for it?
$300 for it.
And then you and your friend John Dover turned it into
Butchered it. Butchered it, and then he made art out of it.
Yeah, cut it all apart and turned it into a race car. But then never got around to finishing it.
Correct.
But this is almost 40 years later, and it's still exactly as you remember it. Nothing's changed other
Except for
than
the paint. It wasn't painted, and the front wheels. Pretty much.
Other than that,
Other thing, yep.
that's wild that it's still that similar after all those years.
Yep. If I remember correctly, John sent me to the salvage yard to get that style of rack and pinion steering and brought it home, cleaned it up. In the primer in those photos, I primed those pieces and took it to John. I think that's how it played out. And I remember too, when John was building this thing, I'd go up there and visit, and he'd be on the floor with chalk doing his math for his tubing bending or whatever he was figuring. He had stuff written all over the floor. I thought that was cool too.
Were you gonna paint it red, white, and blue?
No, my original idea was to paint it to match my other one.
Okay.
It was red with a black vinyl top and the side stripes.
Okay.
So I was gonna paint it just like that, except clear over the stripes, have everything under the clear.
Gotcha.
So that was my plan. However, the imitation T-top kind of gives you an option to do something a little different.
Yeah, they do the vinyl tops on just the
Yep.
just the race section, or is it just
The
the
lower-
side?
the
Just
lower-
the lower
The
section,
lower
Yeah.
part, yeah.
which is way different than everybody else.
Yep. Cool, man.
All right, well, let's set you down and talk about it in detail.
I don't remember the exact year, but it was somewhere in the early to mid 80s when I purchased the car. And the car was actually located about a quarter of a mile from a girl I dated in high school. So I always seen it sitting there in the yard, and then at some point I went and purchased the vehicle. So $300 because I already had some AMC stuff, and that was
Okay.
how the plan began.
With bad ideas, all starts with a bad idea, right?
I guess, yeah. As far as money goes.
And you were mentioning the shirt, so tell the story about your shirt.
So the shirt, like I said, I had another Javelin anyway that I purchased when I was 16, and that was the car I drove to high school. Got into a little more hot roddy stuff and got in the NAMDRA club. So this shirt was purchased from the NAMDRA club and to be worn with this car. So this is the first time I've worn this shirt in 35 years. It was put in a drawer and never worn.
And you said your goal was to wear the shirt when the car was finished.
Right. Yep.
So, it's not quite finished, but we're almost there. We're getting there.
It's good enough. It's married again.
I was able to track down your brother, and then your brother called you.
He actually called me or sent me a text, told me to call him, and he said, some guy's calling, said your name was on some paperwork and trying to find you. And I was like, well, what's he talking about? And he started explaining it, thought it was a title, maybe the Javelin, but he wasn't sure. So, oh man, it was like, I don't know, it was a big surprise. It was very kind of mixed emotions to a little bit, because, you know, I didn't know like what happened to the car, and I'd often wondered about it. But then to know that it hadn't been really touched is like, whoa, this is cool. You know, instead of seeing a finished car, it's like it was. So yeah, I was real excited. Other than the paint, it didn't have any paint on it. In the front wheels. Pretty much everything else is as I remember it, other than the fiberglass hood. So
It's hard to believe that.
I know.
It really is.
It's like amazing.
It's like a story you never hear about.
I mean, that if you wanted it to be this is what you would want it to be, you know, like it was when it left, rather than finished in whatever course it took. I mean, this is amazing.
Well, now you get to be a part of its story still,
right?
Because we were able to track you
it's
down.
Cool, man. My heart's not broken anymore. That's my baby.
That's awesome. So run me through a little of the history of like how you got connected to AMC in the first place.
Well, my dad and his younger brother, they were both technicians for the American Motors dealership in Shelby. The building is still there, but I don't think there's anything in it now. So they both worked there, and they grew up in Arkansas racing dirt track cars as teenagers, and my Uncle Wayne actually had a Rambler he brought to Shelby, and it was pretty radical. And then they built another Rambler that they were going to start drag racing in Shelby. And they ran out of money, couldn't ever get it hooked up. They had the car built, but they just ran out of money. So, and they got rid of all that stuff. So that kind of got my interest in American Motors stuff because I was around it. Thought they were cool. And just went from there. Everything grew. The next thing you know, our little 2-car shop at the house was all American Motors stuff. Time and chain belts, and gears and parts all over the pegboards and transmissions and blocks, all AMC stuff everywhere. And then this landed in the middle of it.
And in the meantime, you had another Javelin.
Yes, I had bought it when I was actually 15, and that was my first car. And Dad said, I'll pay the insurance, but you're going to pay the car payment. So I had a $143 car payment at 15, and I went to work part-time at the top of the neighborhood in a grocery store to make my car payments.
And so out of all the AMCs, was it always the Javelin for you?
Yes. I just thought it was kind of cool. It was like a mixture between a Corvette and a Mach 1 Mustang, kind of, in my eyes. The fender's kind of like a Corvette. The style's similar, like a Mach 1, kind of. And I liked both of those cars, so this is like, man, that right there that's the perfect car. And you can see a little Mopar stuff in it a little bit. So I liked the taste of all of them in there. I just thought it was cool.
Well, I've always heard it joked about that it's AMC stands for all makes combined.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, the plan was for it to be this. That was the whole purpose because I needed a car that I could butcher up and do this too. And that was the perfect car. Because it wasn't running, the interior was bad in it, so it was pretty much junk, just sitting in the front yard of a mobile home up on a hill. And I had driven by it for a couple of years. I mean, I remember it sitting there with weeds growing around it. And I was like, man, the wheels turning. So I don't remember what led to this idea, but like I said, cruising was big then. There were some hot rods around, and we had this little strip where we would run maybe quarter mile each way. Burger King, McDonald's, all this stuff. So hot rod was a pretty big deal back then, and I wanted to be cat daddy. John had a Gremlin, and according to my dad, he had put a front subframe in it, and I think he had a 396 big block in it. And I don't remember if that's when he was driving it to school or after, but my dad gave me that information, and when we were talking about doing this, he was like, that might be the guy you need, kind of directed me toward him.
So you were early 20s, John was
3 or 4 years older, yeah.
And you guys got together to build this. I mean, this is crazy for a 20-something-year-old.
The first thing I can remember is once we were in the middle of working on this. Prior to that, I don't remember the details. But I do remember we become pretty good friends during the process, and I remember I had broken up with me and my girlfriend of 5 years out of high school had broken up, and I was all heartbroken and depressed, and I remember John coming to pick me up in a blue 280Z, He said, come on, you're gonna get over that girl, or something to that effect. We go cruising around town. So I was thinking how cool it was, because like I said, he was like my hero. Here I am hanging out with him, you know, cruising uptown with him. And then after the project, we just kind of grew apart for different reasons. I mean, nothing bad, just he had his life and I was young. You know how you are at 20, 23, whatever. You're all over the place. Interests change quick. So one thing led to another, and then I had moved to a town about 30 minutes away to be grocery manager at a grocery store chain. So that was taking a lot of time and of course different interests, but the car was just setting and mom and dad was getting separated, so I didn't have anywhere to put everything, so I had to kind of liquidate everything and get out from under it. So the idea of being a possible engine builder, hot rod builder, enthusiast, whatever, all that kind of just changed directions and was out of the picture. So wasn't meant to be. I remember listening on the American Motors Club because, you know, I figured that'd be the best interest for it and someone that would appreciate it for what it was. And what was his name?
His name was Tony Mancusi.
Tony, that's right. I was still going to say Tim, but it was Tony. Yeah, I remember he came and picked it up with an open trailer, kind of like yours. I don't remember the details, but I remember I had boxes, the belts, the seats. I had a full line of odometer gauges. All that stuff was going with it. And I can't remember if I gave him the engine blocks or part of them. I don't remember how it all unfolded other than the car. But he got a lot of stuff. He got his money's worth. I lost money.
Was it interesting to you that it was going back to Wisconsin?
At that time, it didn't, you know, it was like, oh, that's a long ways away, but, you know, it's gone.
Because that was amazing to me, because that's where it was built.
Yeah,
It went back to Kenosha.
Right.
That was the craziest part.
And then almost back where it started.
Yeah, very close.
So cool. Seeing that car again is, like I said, it's like reacquainting with a lost kid or something. I mean, you know, it's so cool. The fact that it's not been finished and it's pretty much like it was is just, that's unbelievable. I mean, that's, you know, it's a perfect scenario, really. The actual putting it on the strip was a thought, but it wasn't the main intention. This was going to be a street car. And of course, it would have got on the strip to get everything dialed in, to, you know, see how it run, but that wasn't the main intention. It was to be cool cruising around town, maybe pick the front wheels up occasionally.
So did you have intention to put wheelie bars on it?
Oh yeah, that was highly recommended by John. You might want to consider this.
Did you have wheelie bars for it?
Nope, I never did.
Tony got wheelie bars.
Right, yeah.
So they came with the car.
Yep. And the fact that I missed it, I've always missed the car because, you know, I wanted it to be what it is, but wasn't meant to be, so it never happened. But always wondering what happened to it, and just the story unfolding like it is, couldn't be any better. So very happy to see it again and know that it's still what it started out to be. Amazing, isn't it?
Oh, the stance
That
is
was one thing I
perfect.
liked about it.
So let's get some stuff out of the way. Let you sit in this car for the first time.
And it's perfect closure instead of just not knowing what happened to the car.
Yeah. All right, so it's time for you to sit in the car after all these years.
It's been a few days since I've been in this thing. Man. We need to blast this thing off. This is cool as heck. It's just like I said in it yesterday. It's amazing. This is so cool. Man, we need to take this thing down the strip. This is awesome.
Do you think you'd ever be sitting in this car again?
No. And I remember I would always sit in here thinking about where I was gonna put the gauges and all, and I had a window net for it also. But I always thought about all the padding I was gonna have to put in. I was like, man, I'm gonna have to cover all these roll bars up in padding. I'm gonna hit my elbows and my head.
Did you ever get in it and make motor noises?
No, I didn't do that. I didn't do that. It's cool. And I had a shifter for it. It was a B&M shifter. But I was reluctant to mount it because I really didn't know what to do here. I didn't know what to do. I was just dumbfounded. Cool. Yeah, this is awesome, man. This is amazing.
Cool. We're gonna be able to get you out of it?
Nope. Just bring me a sandwich. This is amazing, man. I can't thank you enough. I didn't realize you couldn't open the door from the inside for a roll bar either. I don't remember that part. Man. This is awesome. I don't know what to say. I'm speechless. Did you get the window net with it?
No, I didn't get any gauges with it.
Oh, really?
I'm gonna have to talk to Tony.
I had a full set of gauges of the monster tack.
Yeah, that's what's gonna go in it for sure.
Monster
tack.
Had the oil pressure, the water. I don't remember 4 or 5 of the, what were they, 2 5/8 gauges?
Yeah.
Water filled gauges.
Well, that was one of the most amazing things to me seeing this car is that literally the dash has never had a hole put in it. It's never even been mounted. It's just loose
Still
in
got
there.
the pencil marks where Johnny put the rivets in it.
Yeah, isn't that
I
crazy?
seen those in the photos and I was like, man, that is crazy.
You can still see his handwriting on the dash.
Yeah.
I mean, in pencil too, not Sharpie. Pencil marks are still there.
Yep.
So we'll have to get you and John together at some point with the car.
Absolutely.
That'll be one of the coolest things to see.
But that was one of the reasons I never really done anything to the car, because at that age and at that time, I was like, I'm not sure what my options are as far as how to do things. You know what I mean? I was still trying to figure that stuff out. So I didn't want to mess anything up. But definitely had all the gauges to go in and everything. And I remember those seat belts.
Well, you want to know what's funny? Here, let me grab one. So they're still brand new in the box. If you open it up, it says 1986 on the tag.
Oh, really?
From when they would have expired.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? Literally never been in the car.
I got in there and put them on, but I never mounted them. I think I mounted the submarine belt
Yeah.
and got in the car. I might have mounted them onto the bars. So
Isn't that insane that those are still brand new?
you still got the...
Oh yeah, they're all in that box.
So what was it, a 6-point harness?
I think
What it's
5
called?
point.
5 point? Yeah, man.
Yeah, the fact that they expired in 1986
I
is
know, that's
hilarious to
crazy.
me. May of 1986 is when they...
I guess that's why I got them so cheap. I didn't even know that they had expiration
Yeah.
dates. But for the street, you know, it wasn't really...
It doesn't matter, yeah.
But I remember sitting in there with this. I thought this was the coolest thing, because that's like the real deal right there, buddy. That's NHRA stuff in my mind.
Oh, it is.
I'm sitting there with this, and I got the removable steering wheel, and I'm like, man,
Well, race car driver. That's super cool.
about to have me a badass car.
Yeah. So I want to give a huge thank you to Rob for coming by and telling us stories about the car, because when you buy a car, oftentimes you don't get any of the stories. You just get a car and you have to assume what the stories were, or you just never truly know. And look, we get to know directly from the source.
It's awesome, man, with outdated seatbelts.
And the crazy part is, he's literally almost exactly a year younger than my dad.
Yeah.
The guy that built this car in the 80s is younger than him.
Which means we're both old now.
I'm feeling it.
Super cool, so that's amazing. So we got another special guest in the shop. Well, 2 special guests. We got my Aunt Cheryl and Sally herself. But we're gonna put her in another car and let her experience the Javelin. So it's gonna be interesting because you got a roll cage.
Yeah, you get in. Yeah.
So the seat moves around a little. So put in this leg first, and then you can sit down on the roll cage if you
Watch
need to.
your head.
Yeah, watch your head.
Oh, Lord.
You ready to go racing? Here, let's put your steering wheel on. I don't know what's wrong with that motor. It sounds like it's got a problem.
You smarty. Oh, Lord.
What do you think of a race car? Is this the first time ever in a race car?
I don't know, probably. You expect me to remember all that?
We expect you to drive it and win.
Yeah, you're gonna go
Okay.
racing?
Let's go.
Gotta love Grandma Sally. She's always an endless source of entertainment.
Like Betty White.
That's awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, you just gotta make the motor noises because it doesn't run yet. So
I
that's-
know.
Yeah. Man.
Sorry, motor.
Yeah, you need to get out of her way. She's ready to rip already. So that needs to go in here so she can actually, you know, sit in it and we can hear it run. Oh man, that's hilarious. Having a good old time out here. So involve your family with your projects. Don't just keep them to yourself.
Javelin Sally.
Javelin Sally, yeah, a little different than Mustang Sally.
Down.
That's awesome. Well, let's see if we can get you out of this thing or if you're stuck in here forever.
Hold on. Oops. So you can hold on to that.
Yeah, this thing doesn't move, so if you need a handhold,
I can't.
just watch your head.
Let me do it my own way. Of course. You always do.
She loves doing it her own way. Look, she did it herself. 89 years young, and she just made that happen. She got in and out of a race car. Most 89-year-olds can't do that. That's impressive. Give me a high five.
Hey, baby.
Nice. So we're doing some more filming for Javelin the movie with Jonathan Hickman here. He's finally taken over because I filmed the last segment with Rob here because he had to go do important things at the courthouse this morning. But we got Sally herself set up in front of the little legendary Green Hornet. Do you remember when this car was running? Used to come to your house sometimes and do stupid things at the original Sally Speed Shop, which was your driveway. And we've got a bunch of cool old family photos set up that she's gonna walk us through. So this is actually my dad's oldest brother, Bob, who had an AMC Javelin. One of their friends had a second gen Camaro. And then Bob also had a Dodge Challenger that he unfortunately totaled quite severely. Apparently rolled it a few times. And that was it back when he was driving it in his military garb. But lots of family photos. When's the last time you looked at all of them?
It's been a long time.
That's so cool though. That's why photos are so cool because they remind you of things you have kind of forgotten. They kind of jog your memory a little bit. So I'm excited to hear her stories. You'll have to watch the movie for that though, because it's where all the fancy stuff is going. Me, I'm just messing around with a GoPro. And my aunt's here. So little family gathering at the shop today. And here we are 1 week out from when this car is supposed to go racing. Yeah, if it weren't for the last minute, nothing would ever get done around here. So if you want to see if we get this thing done and get to take it racing up at the AMC Homecoming race in Kenosha, Wisconsin, yeah, you need to stay tuned. But it's coming along. Motor and trans is in, we're doing some wiring, running some fuel lines, and hopefully it'll be ready to race here in just a few days.
It's actually only 5 days.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah.
It's fine, we got it. And as always, thanks to each and every one of you for watching these videos. It helps us a lot, and what would help us even more is if you went and hit that subscribe button right now to stay tuned for future videos. Drop us a like, let me know what you liked in the comments, what you didn't like, and I'll see you guys on the next one.